Yesterday on the show, we talked to both Jay Gruden and Brian Baldinger about the Deebo Samuel trade and the possibility of adding another receiver. You should podcast those interviews when we're done tonight. They were both tremendous. But one of the things I took out of that was that both of those guys didn't like the idea of Washington being in on Davante Adams, even after his release, even if it came at a bit of a discount for him to try to win with Jaden Daniels over the short term. Both think he's a bit of a declining player, especially Baldy, who talked about the fact that they need to think about speed. They need to think about adding youth at wide receiver, and I couldn't agree with that more. Now, Christian Kirk is not young. He's not necessarily a burner, but I think he'd be a way better fit financially and with what they're looking for as a complement to the two guys they have than going and getting a DK Metcalf or a Davante Adams, who are going to be, target vultures that need touches. And so I'm really in on the idea of Christian Kirk. I also think it's very obvious to say that he and Kingsbury had a good relationship. He played really well for Kingsbury. Kingsbury supposedly liked him, according to all reports.
Got him paid. I mean, honestly, yeah.
It just seems like it's a no-brainer that they would call him. I mean, how many guys did they bring in here that worked with members of this coaching staff? That is a big thing that they like, is familiarity.
Sure. And you would think at this stage of his career could accept that role, right? Where you're not going to be a 133 target guy at this stage, which he was when he first got to Jacksonville. They didn't have much else there. I mean, he was their attempt at kind of a Jason Worth-like signing, where Jacksonville was a joke and needed some help, and they overpaid for Christian Kirk because they needed to upgrade desperately just to do something, right? So they tried to kickstart something, didn't work out, but that's not important. He played well for them. I don't like, it's one of those guys. He's one of those kind of guys. The analogy I would use is, there are a lot of guys in the NBA who could score 20 a game for a terrible team, right? But can you do 20 a game while playing really good team ball? That's kind of the next level. He had 84 catches for 1,100 yards for a terrible team. I don't know that he could do that for your first division club. I don't know that he's a guy that you'd want to be your number one, if you're trying to beat the Eagles or a Super Bowl contender. But that's not what you'd be asking him to do. He would be a complementary piece that, if you left him alone, could really hurt you. And that, to me, is what I'm after.
I also don't think he needs touches. I think if he came here and signed with a team, talking about Christian Kirk, that already had Terry McLaurin coming off 13 touchdowns as a wideout one, and Deebo Samuel, who's not going to be the traditional two, but is going to get some targets, should catch 60-plus balls, has a chance to touch the football, on a good day 8 or 9 times, on a bad day 3 or 4 or 5 times. I think you kind of get in where you fit in a little bit. And that has to be what you're looking for to some extent, with someone who can make some plays, which is not necessarily an easy runway to put the plane down on. It's not easy to find that guy necessarily. You're trying to thread a needle here. This was Brian Baldinger on the show last evening before we said goodbye right at 6:20.
Deebo's already challenged just from a speed standpoint. I mean, Davante ran a 4.58 in 2014. He's an electric guy when it comes to just his ability to beat off the line of scrimmage. But I think you were looking at a declining player. I mean, I think Washington, they went older and it worked out on defense last year with a lot of veteran players. That's fine. They filled a lot of one-year needs. But, I would try to build with youth around Jaden Daniels, guys that are going to be there for the next 3 years. And I don't know that Davante, he might give you a year. He gave you a good second half of the season in New York last year. But I would try to get younger. I try to get younger and get faster. Teams that just can blister you out of the blocks just give you a lot of problems. And I would try to get faster at that position.
Man, did I love that take. I just thought it was like I wrote him the damn script and handed it to him and said, Baldy, when you join us, read this at some point. I am all for supplementing and kind of providing the pillars of the roster like they did last year with Bobby Wagner and Zach Ertz, having those veterans and those steady Eddies, so to speak. No problem. Let's do that. But also, we got to be thinking about, how do they get younger? How do they get faster? That's what wins. How do you get more explosive? How do you get more dynamic? Let's present issues with speed. And I'm not just talking about offense. People think about it that way. Both sides of the ball. Present issues with speed. Dynamic, exotic, explosive, fast, young, twitchy athletes. And so as often as I can now, I'll go get Deebo, but I got to pair him with a up-and-comer with some ceiling. And that's how I'm trying to think about this thing. It's short and it's long-term. it's not very great odds that you're going to get back to the NFC title game this year. Hopefully you do. Give yourself a chance to. If Jaden's the real deal, maybe you will. Maybe he'll drag you kicking and screaming into the fight. But give yourself a chance to be really good over 3 or 4 years too.
I'm all in on that philosophy. I think sometimes, again, I'm not sitting here beating the table for Davante Adams specifically, but I need guys that are dependable. I need guys that can't be stopped, even if it's not the ideal body type, fit, or mold or whatever. So Kirk's more appealing to me than Adams, just for the record. I think just cost-wise and fit-wise and kind of what we're looking for. I mean, to me, basically, I kept beating this drum, and I'm continuing to do so. Terry McLaurin had 82 catches last year as a wide receiver. He's your best, no problem. We all know the drill. They didn't have anybody else get to 50 among the receiving core. It was 45, 35, 30. It's this kind of patchwork. Someone that might be okay this week, and you can get away with that against Carolina and Cleveland and company. But if you want to get back to where you're going, you got to play Kansas City next year. You're playing an A-plus schedule in terms of, on paper, strength of schedule difficulty. You need more guys that are separators, that are problems. And I think that's something where I'm going, I'm willing to break my normal philosophy of let's try to be young. Let's try to build for the long term. I think it's 2 parts. 1, because Daniels is so good. 2, because Ron Rivera and company left the cupboard so bare. I think you're going to have to break from your normal approach just to get enough players, just to get 53.
If they could get a deal done with Christian Kirk in free agency, him wanting to link back up with Kingsbury, and all of a sudden now you're the number 11 team in the NFLPA polling on who you want to work for, and they got the it quarterback that everybody wants to be teammates with. Let's say they lure him over here and they have him. Now you've got your trio with Luke McCaffrey, who's still your project and your prospect, who can play multiple positions and give you some versatility. If they want to take a flyer on a speedy, a burner of a wide receiver in the 5th round after they trade down and add a 5th round pick or something, do it.
Yep.
But at that point, you can fill out your roster if you want to with some cheap veteran options, as your 5th, 6th, 7th guys coming to training camp or whatever. And now that's not really a big issue. You have traded for Debo. You've signed Kirk. You've checked the wide receiver box off the list. It's a way improved, way better situation. If you were to then add a speedy running back who could, make more big plays than Brian Robinson did, instead of 15 being an explosive, now all of a sudden 30's in play. He's got 40-yard gains in the bag occasionally. That's his home run. Well, it's a completely different looking offense at that point, just like that. So it just changes the algorithm on what they have to get done, where now you can really focus on the O-line.
Frees you up.
Drafting a fast running back, and then going hard in the paint on defense, because they've got still talking about over $50 million to spend. The corner market is decent. Go get your edge. Go get your corner. Maybe you draft your edge in the 1st round. Maybe you take an edge in the first 2 rounds. I don't think, if you don't sign anybody, wouldn't be crazy. But it just gives you a lot more options if you can take one of those big needs and put a Sharpie through it.
100%. Yeah, I mean, the only market that looks to me on paper, and again, someone who really knows might tell me here's the fatal flaw with Carlton Davis, Travis Ward, DJ Reed, or Byron Murphy. Maybe someone who knows better could tell me there's something wrong with each one of those guys and why they're available.
My guy, by the way.
Well, me too.
I want Ward bad.
I'm very steamed up for the idea, but somebody could tell me that I'm wrong about this. But the only market that looks good for free agency is the cornerback market. You're not going to find a defensive end unless you want to trade a billion things for Myles Garrett or something like that. And who knows if that's even available. The wide receiver market is buyer beware. Like you're going to be the one holding the bag when it finally, when the bottom falls out on a Stephon Diggs, Davante Adams. Big names, certainly, Hall of Fame caliber names, but guys that, may not be the best fits for you at this moment. There's no left tackles if you want to upgrade in that way, or very few right tackles. That's the one spot where you could fix for your free agency if you wanted to. And all of a sudden, now to your point, you're freed up to not have to reach or press in the draft.